Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Wall Street for Main Street podcast. My name is Mo Dawood, and today's guest, I'm very excited to have her. Her name is Carol Roth. She is an entrepreneur, small business advocate. She's also a judge on a new show on TBS, The Greatest Makers, and she's also the author of a New York Times bestseller book, The Entrepreneur Equation. She also has an action figure of herself as well. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm wondering if you sell that or not.
Hi, Mo. Well, it's great to be here. And yes, we actually we still have a couple of action figures left that we do sell. We gave them away initially as a promotion piece when we launched my book, The Entrepreneur Equation. So if you bought a certain number of books, you would get one of these action figures. And a lot of very interesting and famous people have them in their office. So it's been pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I definitely have to check that out. So I want to talk today about entrepreneurship, especially the small business in this country, and also talk about the economy and also your book. So starting off talking about the current economic condition and how good or bad it had been for small business owners. Since the financial crisis in 2008, the rate of business formation is not as high as people would like it. What do you think the main cause of this?
Well, I don't know how high the appropriate amount is. I'm more for people forming quality businesses versus the quantity of them. And you have to remember that we also have 28 million small businesses in the United States alone. So we need to support the ones that we have as much as we need to create new ones. But I think that it's a risky proposition, obviously, to start a business. You need to be able to not just start the business, but to sustain the business's working capital and also to be able to live on while the business gains a foundation. And that often takes 3 years. And I think with the financial crisis, people became a little bit more risk averse, that they became more careful about the types of things that they pursued, which I don't necessarily in the abstract think is a bad thing. Again, I think it's more important that we get quality businesses that are going to be successful than just encouraging more and more people to blindly start businesses because they're passionate about them.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the biggest struggle for small business owners is the lack of access to capital, either from investors or from the banks that are not loaning as much money as they were before the 2008 crisis.
I think some of that, but you have to remember that most small businesses aren't funded with outside capital. A fraction of 1% get venture capital, a smaller percentage get bank financing. Most small businesses are started with the entrepreneur's own savings, with their credit card, with their hustle, because if you don't have any assets to lend against, no bank's going to ever give you money, whether it's a good economy or not. So I think that, part of being prepared to be a small business owner and an entrepreneur, especially if you're not in an area like high tech. High tech has its own rules, but, kind of for every other business, is that you do need to have some sort of your own financial security first. And I think it's a good discipline because then you're not making bad decisions that are based on, hey, do I pay the rent this month or do I invest in my business? You never want to be in that scenario. So I think part of the overall plan, if you're thinking about starting a business, is really working to get yourself that financial flexibility that gives you the opportunity to start a business. And I think that that helps the entrepreneur succeed.
And that's a great point. And one of the maybe few advantages that a recession can bring to the economy, it allows the economic system, to clean itself out from companies that's not doing so well. Do you agree with that?
It's kind of like my husband always says about forest fires, that every once in a while you need to have a forest fire to clear out the brush. And I do think in some ways that the strong will survive. But that being said, sometimes really good people with really good businesses just end up being unlucky on timing and not having the financial flexibility to withstand that time period. So I think that there are some casualties that unfortunately happen, above and beyond the ones that shouldn't be there. So I think it probably is a worse scenario than perhaps your thesis. But it does really test who has the mettle and the perseverance to keep going when everything looks bleak.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people lose their business after the 2008 financial crisis, and it's really sad to see that happen. And so I want to talk about the presidential election. And
do we have to? I'm just kidding.
It's very entertaining. I mean, I don't watch any of the debates, but I see a little bit of pieces and bits of people talking, and I see what's going on Twitter and Facebook, and watch a couple of videos. But for me, I don't think the candidates are giving enough attention to the small business owners and entrepreneurs, especially in a climate of high taxation and regulation. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of my fundamental issues, and I think it's not just this crop of candidates, but it's the government in general. Before I cited the statistic that we've got 28 million small businesses in the United States, we also have 6 million of those that have employees. If you think about supporting those businesses, if everyone that already had an employee just was able to add one more employee, that would be 6 million new jobs. If you had half of the ones that didn't have employees hire their first employees, that would be 11 million new jobs. We would have so many jobs we wouldn't know what to do with. And unfortunately, the people who are running the country either don't understand or don't care about small businesses, and maybe it's a mixture of both, but just fundamental things like not understanding that most small businesses in this country are pass-through entities, and their owners get taxed at a personal income rate versus a corporate income tax rate, not understanding a lot of the burdens, things like the minimum wage and rules around internships and hiring practices and healthcare impact in a very negative way the ability for small business owners to be able to grow. And frankly, I've surveyed small business owners in this country before, and our studies have shown that they spend about 40% of their time on paperwork and things that don't produce any revenue. You would think we would want the people who are the backbone of this country and the economy to be focusing on producing revenue, growing their businesses, and creating jobs, not on paperwork and regulation. So I think it's a giant problem that I would love to see a competent candidate address. I just don't have a lot of hopes, at least for the near future.
And one of the popular platform right now is increasing minimum wage to $15. Now, the state of California just passed a law that's saying they're going to raise their minimum wage from what it is now to $15 by, I think, 2020. And I don't know if you've read what the governor said. He said it doesn't make any sense economically, but I'm going to sign the bill anyway.
Well, it doesn't make any sense economically, and I think it's against the spirit of the free markets. And what I feel most badly about is that it's being sold as something that will help very poor people when it actually has the opposite effect. What it does is it takes jobs away from people who don't have skills. They don't have education. They don't have skills. It takes away those opportunities for them to come in and be able to learn on the job, because either a business decides that they don't need the people because it's too expensive, they replace them with technology, or they find somebody who's more qualified and is worth the $15 an hour. So the very people that we're pretending to help actually suffer the most. And I think having a minimum wage at all creates this artificial floor that doesn't let the free market work and doesn't let people, provide the services, and businesses pay for the services based on value. So I'm highly against it at all. I'm certainly against raising it. And I think that you're going to see that it's going to end up hurting young people. It's going to end up hurting minorities. It's going to end up, and frankly, we're already seeing it. And you can actually go back and look at historically as the minimum wage has been increased and increased, that the number of young minorities in urban areas being able to hold jobs has actually decreased. So we've seen the numbers, we know what it does, and I just don't like the sort of blatant lies around who it's going to help, because that's just not the case.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, in California, the taxes is already so high there, and I think a lot of business are starting to flock to California and go to Nevada and Arizona. So that's not going to help the economy there.
Yeah, we've seen this all across the country. I lived in Illinois. I've done work in California, so I have to file taxes in both arenas. And we're seeing in these areas that have these quote unquote progressive policies, with very big governments that are against free markets, that you just have net outflows of people. And like you said, more and more people end up leaving those arenas to go work elsewhere, which decreases the revenue base for taxes, and ends up meaning that the people who stay there have to pay more and more, and it's just a vicious cycle. And I don't understand why certain states can't get their arms wrapped around this, but eventually they're going to have to compete with states like Texas, who do get it and have benefited significantly from the idiocy of these other states.
Yeah. Do you see a major collapse coming in California? I think Silicon Valley and Hollywood had kept the game going for them in California due to their I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just laughing. Yeah, no, listen, I think that it's a race. I mean, if you look at the debt ratings, in Illinois and in California and in certain areas, at some point we saw it happen in Detroit. To think that it couldn't happen in other cities or even to an entire state, I think would be naive to think.
Yeah, I think the main problem is all these politicians have no experience. Well, most of them have no experience running a business. They all grow up going to Ivy League school, and straight from there they become politicians or they become lawyers, and they go straight into politics and never had any experience, looking at balance sheets or financial statement and managing employees and try to, create capital.
Well, I'll defend the Ivy League people, because I went to Wharton undergrad at University of Pennsylvania. So there are some Ivy Leagues that actually do teach economics and create some understanding. But you're right. I think, in terms of the people that we elect, most of those people want to be career politicians. We haven't set up a system that incentivizes really great people to do true public service. It's become a career path, and I think that that's distorted the system. We have no criteria for people being able to tell the difference between an income statement, a cash flow statement, and a balance sheet, as you've noted. And they fundamentally are very short-sighted, because they care about their political clout in the political party instead of the long-term impacts and really servicing the people that they're supposed to be serving. And I would like to see a fiduciary standard that's instilled for politicians, amongst other things. But I think that if politicians are going to say that, investment advisors and other companies, a board of directors is going to have a fiduciary responsibility to their stakeholders, I have no fundamental understanding of why the people who we elect to be serving on our behalf aren't held to a similar fiduciary standard. And, I think something like that is desperately needed.
Yeah, it'd be great if we get another party that would challenge the Democrat and Republican on their platform. In this upcoming election, I know the Libertarian Party has some momentum. Obviously, they won't win, but it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I would say it would be a lot more entertaining if we didn't have to live with the result of it.
Yeah, I agree. So how do you feel about the economy overall for the next few years? Do you see another recession coming down, or do you think the economy is improving?
I think if we see any recession, it should be fairly mild, absent some sort of a black swan event. Obviously, if there's some sort of a war or a collapse in Asia or something that could have a major repercussion. But, I call the United States the skinniest kid at fat camp. So we're basically the best of the worst. So, if you look in the global economy, we at least have like some very small amount of growth, and at least we're kind of slugging along, where I think there are a lot of other countries that have much bigger problems. That being said, at some point we have to get the Fed to stop interfering with interest rates. We need to incentivize companies to invest it in, equipment and make other capital investments, hire more people. We have to create those kinds of incentives to be able to spur the growth. And, again, sort of the whole short-sighted nature of where politics and Wall Street are sort of intersecting these days, that's a serious problem. So, I don't necessarily foresee, major, another major crisis, but, could we be in this period of stagnation for a long time? I certainly think that's much more likely than that we're all of a sudden going to start growing tremendously because nobody's made those investments to be a catalyst for that growth.
And that's a great point. So I want to shift gears here and talk about the book that you wrote a few years ago called The Entrepreneur Equation. Now, I just finished reading the book. It's a great read for anybody that want to read it. And I like it because it's different from the other entrepreneur books I've read. Because your book is more realistic on what it's like to be an entrepreneur. I mean, you have criteria that people can look at to see if they want to become an entrepreneur. I mean, some people think of entrepreneurship and they look at, Shark Tank, or they look at Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, or they look at Elon Musk and think it's a cool thing to do. But actually, it's a lot of work, and it's very stressful.
It is a lot of work. Go figure. Every overnight sensation seems to take 10 years to become an overnight sensation, but nobody tells that part of the story. And, we call my book The Entrepreneur Equation, sort of the motivational book on entrepreneurship, because it is very much like me and my brand, very authentic and very realistic. And I did want to paint that picture because the success rates for small business, aren't good enough. They're actually quite low and have a tremendous amount of room for improvement. And I do think that the making entrepreneurship sexy is a good thing within reason, but we've kind of gone overboard, and people fall in love with their ideas and don't realize how difficult it is. I think of it very much like a marriage, where you may have a bride who's very excited to plan every detail of the wedding, but doesn't spend any time thinking about the happily ever after. If people invested as much in the happily ever after as they did thinking about the flowers and the band, we'd have far fewer divorces. And I think the same thing goes with businesses. If you spend as much time thinking about the everyday blocking and tackling, which albeit is not, quite as interesting or sexy, but that's where the business actually becomes successful. The writing the business plan, having the ribbon cutting ceremony, that's exciting, but that's not going to ultimately determine the success. The actual execution of your idea is what determines the success. So I wanted to paint that very realistic picture for people because I think that it's important for people who are going to risk their time, money, and effort to really know what it is that they're getting into.
Yeah, and I see a lot of other books, entrepreneur books, like do this in 6 months you make six figures, or
right, yeah, the 7 steps to success, which is I just call complete BS on. There is no formula. There is no 7 steps to success, and even the most wildly successful entrepreneurs on the planet, Richard Branson has had failures along the way. Donald Trump has had failures along the way. Oprah struggled getting her newest venture off the ground. So you just, again, I laugh when I see those books, but I've countered it with a dose of realism.
Yeah, and I appreciate you writing that book because it's very realistic and more accurate of what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And if people that enjoy the grind and the hustle, I think entrepreneurship would be good for them. But people that want to, one of the things you talk about in your book is that people that start their own business based on what they're passionate about, which is not something that you advise.
No, definitely not. I always say if left to what you're passionate about, then, Tony Hsieh doesn't start Zappos.com, Imelda Marcos does. She's much more passionate about shoes than Tony Hsieh, but he was passionate about serving the customer, and executing on the business plan. And, frankly, it's okay to not earn a living from something that you enjoy doing. That's why we have hobbies, and, that's why we call work and a hobby a hobby.
Yeah, I agree. So if people want to start their own business, how do you advise them on doing that? I mean, obviously, it's not a good idea just to quit your day job and start your own business right the next day, right?
Correct. I think that there are a number of things to think about. First of all, I think that if there's any semblance of a formula, it's about the right person pursuing the right opportunity at the right time. So the right opportunity means that you have a significant problem that needs a solution, and one that's big enough to address. And the right person means that you are the right person with the right skill set to be able to go in and solve that problem. And the right time means that you have prepared, that you've done your business plan, that you've gotten your finances in order so that you can start the business, sustain the business, live on, for the 2 or 3 years it's going to take for the business to get the foundation underneath it. And, I also believe very much in testing the concept. Is there some sort of way for you to do it on a smaller scale first on the side? Can you get repeat customers? I have so many people who say, oh, I make cupcakes and my friends all bought them once and now I'm going to start a business. And I always come back and ask them, well, did they buy them again? Because if they bought them once, that's them being nice because they're your friend. But do they buy them from you every week? And they say no. And I said, well, they don't have a proof of concept. You've proven that these people don't like your cupcakes that much, or that there isn't a market for more cupcakes. And so I think to the extent that you can do that, I think that's tremendous. And again, do it with little money and, as little time as you can to start proving it out and build it out from there, so that if you do have a failure and you need to pivot and, retest and rejigger what you've created, that you haven't wasted 6 or 7 figures and you haven't wasted 6 months or 3 years of your time. So, really the more you can do to test in small batches and continually change and pivot, I think that that's a really solid approach for many people.
One of the things that prevent people from starting their own business is the economic condition that we're in right now. But there's many well-known companies that started during tough economic times. For example, Uber. I think it started around 2009. So that's one company that did very well. Then there's other like crowdfunding website that started after the financial crisis. So there's many companies out there that's done well during tough economic times.
Yeah, well, actually, I think it's a great time because you have, the market sort of clears out for you. So, you're starting at the bottom. But, again, if you're solving a problem, there are a lot of problems that still exist, even if the times are tougher. So I really focus more on what's going on a micro basis with the problem that you're solving versus overall macro conditions. I think that that's much more valid and important for you as a business person.
So what do you think about crowdfunding? Has it changed the landscape for entrepreneurs that want to acquire capital? I mean, have you ever gone on angel list and invested in a company in that way?
I haven't. I'm subscribed to a number of those, and I never really invest in those because I tend to invest where I know the entrepreneurs and where I really believe they can execute, and I don't think that format really works that well for somebody like me. I also like to invest in companies that are more proven, have more of a track record. It's just sort of a personal philosophy. People always say to me, do you want to get in on the ground floor of my investment? And I always say, no, I want to get in on the floor right before we get off the elevator. So that's just sort of my own personal investing philosophy. I'd rather take on less risk and get a good return than take on tons of risk and maybe get a home run and maybe get nothing. But I think that certainly, crowdfunding sites have opened up a way to really market test your product and connect with consumers and see if you're good at selling before you get too far along. I think that, letting broader groups of people be able to invest, via sort of the angel vehicle, I think it's all a good thing. I mean, it's certainly a very inefficient market in terms of connecting companies with capital. But I think the bigger issue really is, the so many entrepreneurs who want people to give them money before they've done anything to take the risk out of it. And I think if you're an entrepreneur, you really need to do as many things as possible as you can to take as much risk out as you can, to achieve milestones, to get customers, to do things on your own, to have somebody who is truly willing to invest in you. So,
do you think the technology industry is in another bubble like in 2000? Because I'm reading like companies with no revenue getting millions of dollars from investors. So I just want to get your thoughts on that. Do you think there's another bubble in the tech industry?
I do think there is a bubble in terms of valuations. I think we've already seen that bubble start to deflate in terms of valuations coming down. I think the difference between this time and last time around is that mixed in with some of the stupid valuations and stupid companies are some really solid companies. I think last time around there were very few really solid, viable business models. And I think we're seeing more, viable business models. I still think in many cases the valuations far exceed the value of those models, but investors tend to pay for possibilities rather than realities. So, this happens from time to time, and eventually it will correct itself and no one will learn from it and it'll happen again.
Yeah, and that's the power of free market, right?
It is. It's the power and, sometimes the downside of it, but it always does normalize.
Right. So before I let you go and talk about your new TV show, The Greatest Makers.
Yes.
So you're a judge on this show. So what's the difference between this compared to like Shark Tank?
Sure. So it's called America's Greatest Makers. It is on TBS on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern and Pacific time. And it is actually created by Mark Burnett, who created Shark Tank in concert with Intel, but it is a little bit different in that it's won a competition. So basically we have 24 teams that are competing for a $1 million prize and that they get eliminated along the way. So it's sort of Shark Tank crossed with The Voice or Shark Tank crossed with American Idol or Project Runway or something like that, versus the standalone Shark Tank, which is great because you get to see these companies who make it build on their platforms and you kind of get to take the journey with them, which I think is exciting. The other difference is that these are all inventors, innovators, and makers, and they are people who use technology, in this case Intel's Curie platform, to solve a problem and to create something. And we've got people in really every industry you can think of, from fashion to health and wellness and beauty to medical devices to toys, you name it. So I think the sort of breadth of the application of technology and the cool innovations are, really kind of at the next level. So it's a really great show. We've got competitors from a 15-year-old up to a 60-year-old and everybody in between, and to see how people, some of whom really never used technology before, with mentorship from Intel and the support of the maker community, can really create these incredible inventions that solve real problems, is very, very inspiring.
Yeah, it's a great show. I see a lot of interesting innovation from the first episode, and this second episode will air tomorrow night. Is
Yes,
that correct?
correct.
All right. Well, Carol, thank you for your time. If people want to find out more about your work, like your blog, where can they go?
Yeah, so a couple ways to connect with me. One is at carolroth.com. In fact, right on the home page in the bottom right, you can get a free ebook there, 60 low and no cost marketing PR tips. On Twitter, I'm at Carol J.S. Roth. And then, of course, America's Greatest Makers on TBS on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, and also on CNBC, where I'm a contributor, usually on Wednesdays on the closing bell from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern time as well.
Are you a Cub fan or a White Sox fan?
I'm a Blackhawks fan.
Oh, you're a Blackhawks fan. Oh.
The right answer in Chicago, Cubs versus White Sox. The right answer is Blackhawks right now. So after June, maybe I'll realign. But I'm a Chicago fan, so baseball is not my number one love. But I'm probably more Sox than Cubs, but certainly will root for either as they move along.
Okay, I'm a Capitals fan, so hopefully we'll meet you guys in the finals.
All right, well, good luck with that. Hopefully we can keep the Stanley Cup here in Chicago.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, Mo.